Good afternoon, everyone. I'll wait for people to get their headphones on. Once I see all those beautiful lights shining, I will kick off. Excellent. Okay, thank you, everyone. I hope everyone has had something to eat and are ready to go for the afternoon. My name's Aaron Peterson. I'm a solution architect here at AWS, and I'm the MC for Stage 6, so great to have you here. A little bit of what's happening here in this session today. This is going to be purely collaborative today, so we have Colette and Greg facilitating, and amongst a whole plethora of AWS staff here. So you'll have someone helping you facilitate at each table. The short of that is there won't be much content, so you really are here to collaborate with your peers for this whole session. So if that suits you, please hang around. And if you're here to more kind of consume content, then you might feel like that's not the right place for you for the next 90 minutes. In that, I'm really, really interested in how you guys perceive this style of session. The first group loved it, and at the end of the session, we'd love to get your feedback to help promote this style of engagement today. So at the end, we'll let you know again about giving us your feedback through the application. But without further ado, I think let's just kick it off. Let's welcome to the stage Colette and Greg.
Hello, can you hear me? Wonderful. Hi, everybody. My name's Colette, and I am the head of the startup ecosystem across Australia within the startups team at AWS, and it is an absolute pleasure to welcome you here today. No? Mike? Yes, all good? All good. Oh, louder. Gotcha. Where are we actually at? There we go. All right, there we go. So together with Greg Willis, my fabulous colleague that I've had the most amazing 5 years working with, we're hosting the Future Forward Forum today. And the entire purpose of us doing this, like Aaron said, is around collaboration, and it is actually a chance to connect instead of wandering the halls and hope you bump into somebody. Tables are organized by topics and themes and industries, and we have an incredible group of very curious, knowledgeable people here today who come from either being a fairly advanced expert in the AI field, as well as novices looking to learn and understand what is going to be the impact once we start talking about agentic AI. What is the impact within your industries, and also what are the opportunities it brings? Within the AWS startups team, we have supported startups from, napkin to unicorn, as well as work with like some of the largest enterprises in Australia, helping them navigate some of these seismic shifts. Inevitably, everybody gets really optimistic, when technology is going to solve all of our problems, which is quickly then followed by a bit of a oh moment, looking at what the shocks are, what the impacts are, what are the unexpected things that we didn't see coming, what are suddenly the challenges that we're finding within our businesses. And then what the purpose of this conversation is to acknowledge some of those shocks that might be coming or that you might already have experienced, and to then give us the opportunity to turn our viewpoints around, flip the coin, and look at those as white space opportunities for us as well. Whether you're on the enterprise side or on the startup side, what are the opportunities, and are there points where we can help each other navigate through this successfully? So we are going to toggle between, like Aaron said, between the headphones and conversations. When the headphones are up, we'll put a picture of the headphones up in case you don't know what they look like. Please pop them on because it's going to make it easier for us to talk. And then every one of your tables has an AWS table. Just quickly ask your host just to give a little wave. So when the headphones come off, they're the boss at the table. Stop looking at me. Look at them. And please, Greg and I really, really hope that you get a lot out of this and that everybody leaves with at least 2 to 3 new connections that you've made around the table. Okay? We're all in? Got it. All right. So I might just shift a little bit. So the topic is, we're going to start, I'm going to hand over to Greg in a second, but the whole framework for this came from a guy called Steve Vamos. who was the CEO for Xero. He was also very senior within Apple and a leader at IBM. And he really started noticing the same patterns of those shifts and shocks happening and the different ways that organizations respond, whether they perceive something as a shock or as a shift, creates the difference between those organizations and the trajectory they set themselves on. So we're going to start first by just having Greg give us an overview and covering what we're actually talking about when we talk about agentic AI. And then we're going to break down, we'll have one conversation at your table around the shocks, and then we'll take a break, come back on headphones, and we'll go back into conversation mode for the second part. And depending on how wild and animated this conversation is, that there's where every one of your table leads synthesize the learnings, and then what we can do is do some cross-sharing and see if there's similar trends in similar industries, and if there's any sort of connections and narratives between. But with that, what I wanted to do is just make sure that you guys are all comfortable, everybody's happy, and then I'm going to hand over to Greg to give us an overview and walk us through what we're going to be doing next. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you, Colette. Good afternoon. Hope you've enjoyed your summit so far.
Yay.
Yay. Oh, and that's the headphone sign for later.
Sorry. I did skip. Sorry, Greg.
Cool. So agentic AI, who was at the keynote this morning? Everyone? Okay, so Radha talked in quite a lot of detail about agents, agentic AI. There were some great demos. So I'm not going to go over all of that again. But I think it is important to recognize that agentic AI is potentially a really fundamental shift in how we think about human-computer interaction. I mean, I've been in the industry quite a long time, but this is definitely the biggest shift since like the graphical user interface, if you think about it from that sort of, how do you talk to a computer? We've always been like typing or dragging and dropping, and effectively the computer is doing exactly what you're asking it to do, step by step. You know, it's a direct manipulation kind of experience. If you think about agentic AI, you've got agents, you know, it's not a clicking, typing, dragging experience. You're flipping the model entirely, right? It's actually about delegation, and it becomes really a management exercise. You're managing these agents, you're tasking them with your goals, you're telling them the intent of what you're trying to achieve, and then effectively the agents independently choose the best series of actions to achieve that outcome, and then come back to you with that outcome. So it's a very different paradigm. Already we're seeing obviously a lot of business impact from this. I mean, it's possibly overhyped, but also in some ways underhyped, because this is a really fundamental difference. We're seeing organizations using AI agents obviously to improve productivity, delegate, automate tasks. You know, there's cost reductions in amongst that. But also things that I find super exciting are the sort of acceleration in product development, the ability to like research things in depth very quickly, apply that, build prototypes at a speed that was, you know, not feasible before, test ideas with customers, get feedback and keep iterating. So that cost of kind of experimentation and innovation is really dropping away with this technology. It's only going to continue to improve. So it's already clear that agents are handling a lot of routine decisions, workflows over the next 12, 18 months, possibly faster depending on your industry. You can see a lot of transformation, a lot of thinking going into what the software development lifecycle feels like. You know, there's lots of great tools out there for agentic sort of development. And also, it's clear that the organizations that can really grasp that opportunity are going to get some significant competitive advantage here. And also the ones that I think manage to find the best kind of blend of human and AI and collaboration and orchestration. And this is a really fast moving field. I mean, I'm sure everyone agrees that if you're following this, the rate of change is like a Cambrian explosion, right? It's just like every week, things that we go, oh, in a few months this will happen, suddenly they've happened, you know, a month later, 2 weeks later. So I think it's hard for any of us to predict exactly what's going to happen, but I think it's great that we're having a conversation about it, and hopefully a conversation about it with your view in, you know, in your industries. And I'm sure there's people here from very different parts of the world. And also one other thing, responsible AI. So in terms of security, governance, ethical guardrails aren't optional here. They're kind of foundational things that people need to think about as you're putting this in place. So what we're going to do next is introduce the topic. Then we'll leave those questions up there, so you'll have them as a kind of a thought starter. And then we'll get into the conversation.
So we've popped some questions up, some prompt questions for you to help navigate as you start the discussion. But what I would really love to do is just hand over to our AWS table hosts. What we'll do is very quick introductions. I've put a timer on, so I don't know if the timer is going up. So I will just start waving after about 2 minutes, just so you know there's, 8 people on the table?
They'll also do the lights.
We'll do some 3 minutes, just quick introductions, just say who you are, what you're from, to give some context of what expertise you can bring and what you would like out of the discussion. And then we put some prompt questions up that your table hosts will navigate you through. So you are allowed to take off your headphones and be normal people and talk to each other in real life. Off you go. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, I did not.
We off?
Yeah.
Oh,
No? I messed with it. 20 minutes.
Okay, right.
Yeah, sorry.
I thought it was like 2 minutes.
No, I said the 2 minutes, and then, but I think the conversations will just go. I'm not really gonna wave. Like, I don't think if anybody's done an introduction and hasn't started talking, I All right, everybody. If I can grab the table moderators, just. All right, headphones coming on. You can hear me? Fabulous. Awesome. How was that discussion? Good? Yeah? I could hear little bits around the room, and it sounded really, really fascinating. So what I wanted to do is put my wonderful table moderators on the spot. I'm going to run around with a mic. So if you're the moderator, I will ask you eventually to take your headphones off. But what I would like to know is just see what are some of the interesting insights that we got from some of the tables. And I might kick off with healthcare and life sciences first and put Nicola on the spot. Go, Nicola, can you give us a couple of insights from your table? Because this discussion seemed off the charts.
Thanks, Colette. Yeah, it has been a really interesting discussion on this table, so thank you all for joining. Oh, I've got to stand up now as well. I think there's a lot of complexity that comes with healthcare. Certainly people were discussing, internal use case within a company versus actually direct to a patient or consumer. There was a lot of conversation around trust. At what point will people trust AI and agentic AI to actually perform things like diagnosis? And is it better that we stick to maybe an augmented rather than automated approach? And I think questions around how do you even integrate within the healthcare system where you may not own the actual data, a hospital might own it, a GP clinic might own it, and how do you integrate across all of these different types of platforms and those sorts of questions. So it was a really interesting conversation.
Did we get any similar issues around, trust and data in the FSI side? All right, Marker, you are coming up next. Tell us, what did you guys find out? All right, stand up.
Okay. So I had the lovely pleasure of hosting the financial services table, and obviously being financial services, responsible AI is obviously a key topic as well. There was really, really good discussion around obviously the trust in AI providing, things like recommendations and things like, advice to the end users as well. A lot of curious minds around, how people are dealing with things like PII and how do you redact that from, various different applications and different ways of actually providing the right, consent to, participants or actual end users that are interacting with the platform and interacting with your services and your solutions as well. So again, we spoke about obviously some of the regulations around sort of government bodies providing some frameworks to guide businesses in terms of, how to actually enforce that, and whether that actually meant that it's actually going to slow down innovation or it's going to provide a platform to help, build and provide safe guardrails within sort of agentic AI and within the space as well. So again, I'm sure there will be a lot more interesting discussions for the next session, but I'll hand it back to you, Colette.
Thank you, Marker. Anybody, did this ring true for anybody else at tables or a counter view? Yes? Takers, otherwise I'm coming for you. All right, volunteers voluntold. Maddie, on the professional services, I'd love to hear what you guys discussed.
Yeah, hi everyone. We had a pretty good discussion at professional services table, not just from people in professional services, but from people who are delivering projects around AI or receiving professional services. So one of the first things that we discussed was around just how fast this space is moving. And by the time you decide to test the technology, if you're in a large enterprise and you're trying to get that through to production, you've got a few gates to get through to get there. And then you run through that process, you go, we're ready to go, ready to deploy. And the next thing, there's a new thing that's come out and that project you need to kind of scrap or start again or iterate. So how are large enterprises thinking about evolving that and moving a bit faster to keep up with this the crazy pace of innovation? The one that came up pretty quickly as well is around what does this mean for jobs? And does this mean that everyone's going to become a developer and the skill set's going to change? So we dove into that a little bit and talked about, yeah, everyone can use this tool, but can everyone use it well? Does everyone know how to, a few examples came about how people would get reports given to them and they read it and go, Like, yeah, the words make sense and they look like they're related to each other and they form a sentence, but it doesn't actually solve my problem, right? So you need to be really good at giving examples and giving context and prompting to be able to use these tools. So like jobs are just going to change. They're going to shift and people are going to be able to do different things or do more things versus it's going to come and sort of take everything away. We spoke a little bit about, like, and then from a parallel, like from a coding perspective, like we spoke about some research that have come out about how, you know, AI coding assistants are meant to go and produce a whole lot more code and do more things and do more commits, but is it actually driving the output that we all expect? And it can be if you're using it in the right way to structure the way that you're setting up your requirements, using that to create your user stories, using that to create your systems architecture, using that to create your code and using it to create test cases that go and test those things. But if you're expecting to just go build me a thing and then have it go and do all that perfectly and give you an outcome you expected, not quite there yet. So good discussion about like where it's really disrupting, the use cases right now, where some of the hype is and what's working for people versus what's not.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Matt. We've got another 25 minutes and we're going to move on to the next topic unless somebody has a burning contribution that they cannot wait to make. All right, I'm coming for you in the next round. So one of the things then that we're actually trying to think about is the shift. So I know we've talked a little bit about the shocks. Some of the tables already skipped to the shifts, which tells me about the optimism around this room. But we want to ask, like, the same technology that's creating discomfort is also opening doors, and this is really where that opportunity for innovation lies. So what are one of the unexpected implications of agentic AI in your industry or product category where you're seeing the biggest opportunity? I might kick that off and hand that back then into the tables and go, let's get started on this conversation. Thanks, guys. Headphones off. Do you want to keep going with the conversation because I suck at the conversation piece? Or Hello. Hi, everybody. I always feel so bad doing this. Like, you were in such a deep, great conversation. It's just smiles all around the table. Yeah. All right, can we get headphones? Headphones, headphones. Headphones, headphones. All right, do we have everybody? Do we have all our tables almost? There we go. Okay, now I also realize, and this is completely on me, the previous slide contained exactly the same questions as the other slide, so I really hope that you talked more about the positives and the opportunities, because I'm dying to hear, when we're talking about not just the shocks, but now into the shifts, like a bit more of the opportunistic positive side, like if you were betting, where would you put your money in your industry? And I'm going to kick it over to Susie in the... Susie? Yeah, I can see you. Susie, I'm going to run over and bring you the mic. And you can let us know what you guys on the sales and marketing table.
Hi, thanks, Colette. Hi, everybody. So we had some pretty interesting discussions here in the sales and marketing side. A lot of talk about Terminator and Iron Man, so that's fun. But really on the positive side, I think there were some really great discussions had regarding SaaS in general, and is it evolving? Should we evolve SaaS into agentic type of building, or just focus on continuing in the SaaS space? So that was a really interesting topic of conversation. Some positive areas that were discussed as well was AI for all, is putting it into the hands of everybody as opposed to just few. So that was really great as well. But yeah, just in general, I think the positivity is some of the value we're getting from efficiency of automation, especially in the sales and marketing world. The job loss as well, and what's available for the next generation is, I think, a contentious topic. So there were some positives, but some negatives as well. So lots of good discussions. But on the positive side, I would say the negatives list is higher than the positive list. So, yeah.
Ooh, and if that's the case, then I'm going to walk all the way over to the other side of the room and ask Ian, because we were talking a little bit about SaaS and some of those tools, because you've got the SaaS and ISV table here. Can you give us an insight into what you guys talked about?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Colette. So I had the pleasure of hosting the SaaS ISV table. We have a really diverse group of attendees at this table, all the way from students to startup founders, to agri-tech, and all the way up to enterprise SaaS engineers from Ticketek, for example. And so we, interestingly, from the very beginning, there was kind of an overlap for us from the shock and the shift. We didn't view those as mutually exclusive. Like, the shock is the same as the shift. Really what was the theme for our table is it has greatly impacted everybody in some way, shape, or form. And so everybody shared their stories about how they're leveraging it, how they see it going, and how it's fundamentally changing their organizations from the ground up. There was also a theme of, how do we stay relevant as an organization, and what do we do to keep our differentiations in place to be able to continue to keep that market share? So, some of the engineers at the table are doing side projects where they're able to spin up, applications that are competitive to market leaders like overnight. And so some of the other groups are like, okay, well, if that's possible, which we know that it is because we're toying around and tinkering with these things, what do we do to remain relevant and keep our differentiation? So there's still, I think, a lot of uncertainty on where things are going, but fundamentally it's impacting everybody, their workflows, their organizations, their productivity, really from the ground up.
Really helpful and positive. And speaking of differentiation, because I heard the sustainability table was going off the charts, and I figured this would definitely have to be a positive one, right? We're seeing only positive things on this side.
Hi everyone, so I'm Lachlan. I've been leading the sustainability table. Look, we've really talked about the benefits that sustainability can achieve through using AI. There is a lot of talk about things like the number of experiments that you can run, how quickly you can execute on them to deliver an outcome and test those. But also the cost versus reward kind of view of how much energy does it take to run a model. There's a lot of media coverage of every time that you ask Claude a question, you're using a can of Coke's worth of water. So how do you use your Gen AI or your agentic AI tools appropriately, suitably, to be able to build out a solution that is benefiting the world, but also minimizing the impact in the way that you make that decision and build the solution?
Thank you very much. And thank you again, Chris, for your talk this morning. I really enjoyed this. I was going to wander over to my accelerated compute table, because I think that there has to surely just be pure optimism.
Thanks, Colette. I had the privilege of leading the coolest group here, so sorry guys, you made it to the wrong table. But jokes apart, I think we got a couple of good themes out of our conversation, especially getting agentic AI or Gen AI in particular into your day-to-day work. And number one is that some of the assumptions we're making today is that Gen AI is always right? And so whatever output comes, people take it for granted. But then we also uncovered through experiences here that the amount of time you're going to go back and correct AI because it probably hallucinates or has errors is almost, as equal to things you would probably do yourself. Not at large scale, but primary things. Number two, the other observation was that okay, AI is going to do all the productivity stuff. What do employees focus on next? What is their other higher calling? So a very candid ask from the table was that the management team should conquer with this and understand that while AI can take away, or agentic AI can take away some of the day-to-day productivity tasks, they need to empower the workforce to focus on more strategic engagements, things that will actually help them to drive meaningful value into the organization that they're doing. That said, I think overall AI is certainly making day-to-day tasks easier for much of the experiences that we have on the table. But it's a question of taking it with a slight grain of salt as well, because it's not 100% proof. We got to review it and also see what impact it has on our productivity at the end.
Thank you. Thank you so much. See, I was really hoping that somebody was going to say, in my industry, this is the next unicorn and we could just all throw money at it and retire, but I must have missed the brief. So Aaron, could you tell us what you guys were talking about? And then we're going to go to Greg and leave a little bit of time at the end for everybody just to say hi and bye. But Aaron.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, everyone. At our table, we're across industries. So we had a bit of a melting pot of people at the table. But what I found was that everyone at the table is at least experimenting or has a position on AI. And that was kind of our first topic, was what is your awareness and what is your position? Do you want to lead or are you looking to be a fast follower? And so we talked a lot about that. That then leads into the governance and security. Like we had a lot of, we realized that that's got to be a strong stance on what that is, because that then determines what your quality of your output is based on having a strong stance on governance and security. We actually then walked around the table and actually looked around, well, what use cases are happening in our industries at the moment? And we had some really good ones. We had, just the contact center, and because it's such a strongly developed AI solution, generative AI solution now, it's actually out there in industry being used a lot. So that was a safe one that has a lot of efficiency gains. So we talked a lot about that. We also talked about like personalization and marketing, like getting to our customers better and being more direct with how we do that. So a little bit of the marketing, but also over here. And then it was a really interesting one that we had as well, which was actually around having an internal application from a finance organization that does summarization on the body of work of their employees and looking at performance. And I found that really interesting, that out of a financial services institution, generally, HR is probably, you think, would be the last people to use AI. But in this case, they're using that to help summarize, well, what have you achieved this year? Not only from a sense of, are you meeting the bar, but also for all those employees that potentially just aren't very good at selling themselves, right? And actually be able to look back on that and reflect and said, I've actually done really great work this year. So there's some really good use cases there. Thanks.
Thank you. Shut up and take my money. All right, guys, we're going to do one last recap, and I'm going to ask Greg to bring it home for us. Greg.
Thank you, Colette. So we're also cross industry, so there's a bit of a mixed sort of range of industries, slower moving industries, things that are moving faster. So in our first part of our conversation, we talked a little bit about whether this is sort of overhyped or underhyped. And I think there was a view that certainly within the kind of technology teams within businesses, it's quite well understood, at least people are experimenting, but maybe a bit underhyped outside of like technology, and maybe there's not taking enough opportunity yet in some of our industries. Then we also talked a little bit around the opportunity that's here to use these tools to increase the level of internal business collaboration across different kinds of stakeholders. There were some observations that these tools would actually be very good at translating kind of what we're doing and the purpose and the why behind things into language that completely different domains within the business could understand, to kind of try and build some of that sort of shared purpose that we were talking about earlier. So really interesting discussion. A bit of a range of industries. In some of the more regulated industries, a bit of an observation that there's opportunity to maybe help reduce some of the regulatory burden through automation, and that's increasingly there as well. So, but yeah, I think everyone's using it maybe in some different ways. Maybe a bit of shadow AI is out there, a bit like we had shadow IT for quite some time, probably still do. So trying to find the ways to sort of correctly provide that tooling into the organizations with a bit of governance. Looks like I have the mic, so I guess I'm kind of wrapping this conversation up as well. Thank you, Colette. So thank you everyone for spending some time. Hopefully you've had some interesting conversations at the tables. This was a bit of an experiment as to whether this format works well here, because obviously people are coming from a very diverse range to come into our summit. So we'd love your feedback. Please do give us feedback, whether this works or didn't work for you. It's obviously really helpful. The other thing I would encourage everyone to maybe think about a part of your business where there perhaps is some use case here that you haven't really explored. Someone here observed, maybe start small, break it into a chunk, but see if there's some way you can actually, like we've been doing a lot in development and sort of our technology life cycles, but where else in the workflows in your business is an opportunity to maybe start a conversation around whether there's something that could actually benefit from this with the right guardrails. But with that, thank you, everyone. Enjoy the last part of your summit. I hope it's been a really good experience for you, and thank you for coming and spending time with us.